And it took her sort of many, many, many years to sort of build it all back up again. She's an inspiring story. And we talk about in that section of the chapter just how much the need for licenses in states has just really exploded again sort of since the 70s. And there's pushback on it now. We talked a little bit about that in Chapter 7, sort of some optimism and green shoots in the states. But now you need a variety of licenses for all manner of work. And we tell another story of eyebrow threaders, also in the state of Texas, also who had a multi-year fight in order to not require, again, a cosmetology license in that space.
Wonderful. Well, our time is up, and like the Supreme Court, we end our NCC programs on time. But Justice, your last chapter is...
That's a pretty depressing note to end on.
No. We're going to make a little exception.
I mean, let's.
You're going to bring it home.
Okay.
And I want you to really bring it home, because...
Well, I got a lot of work to do to make a...
You can do it, I know.
Dig a deep hole here, Jeffrey.
The amazing last chapter, The Spirit of Liberty, quotes the great Judge Learned Hand about how the spirit of liberty has to live in the hearts and minds of the people.
Yes.
You say some really nice things about the NCC and the importance of civic education, and we're so honored to have you as our honorary co-chair. So, and please take as much time as you want. Please tell our audience on Constitution Day.
There are some people who have got reservations for dinner.
No. This is very important. Why is civic education so urgently important, and what can citizens do to resurrect the spirit of liberty?
Right. So Learned Hand gave the speech and said basically what I believe to be true, that no judge, certainly no judge, no law, no elected representative can preserve the spirit of liberty in this country. It requires it to live in your hearts. So what do we do about this? If you're as thoroughly depressed as I am at the end of this hour, what do we do about it? And I think the answer is, first of all, there's a lot you can do at the state level to deal with this, right? Look at what ISIS did in her world on hair braiding. She got rid of those licensing requirements. And now, in fact, there's a movement, in part inspired by stories like her, to say if you have a license for something in one state, shouldn't it transfer to another, presumptively, unless there's a good reason? How about that? How about that? Okay? And who's doing the licensing requirements? Should we revisit those? Because is it sometimes maybe the barbers who are writing the barber school licenses to protect barbers? Regulatory capture. We've got a story about monks and caskets in the book about that. Maybe we should revisit who's doing the licensing rules, okay? And there's a lot going on at the state levels where this is happening. Idaho, for example, the legislature said, we hereby abolish the entire administrative code of the state, except for those sections that the governor in a due amount of time says are necessary. Wow. Now, I'm not saying you have to go that far, but it's interesting, isn't it? Right? Texas has a sunset law provision that says agencies end unless they are affirmatively renewed within a period of years. New York, New Jersey have commissions now on studying old laws and whether some of them can be taken off the books. How about that? Sensible? Can we all agree on that? Can those things be bipartisan? They are, right? And at the federal level, in case you think it's hopeless, let me tell the story briefly about my former colleague, Steve Breyer, and my current co-chair, and a dear friend. Before he came onto the Supreme Court, he was a legislative aide to Senator Kennedy back in the 70s. And there was an agency called the Civil Aeronautics Board. And the Civil Aeronautics Board was a big deal. You couldn't start a new airline without a license from them. You couldn't change your fares without their approval. And you couldn't offer a new route without approval as well. And Steve Breyer, this started during the Ford administration. It was bipartisan. They looked at this and they said, this is inhibiting competition in a way that is impairing the ability of the American people to fly. It was very expensive. It was nice. I mean, if you flew on Pan Am, and if you're old enough, it was nice, but it was incredibly expensive, right? And who wanted this agency? And it turned out there were only two groups who wanted the agency, and the large industries, because they knew it created a barrier to entry from anybody else, okay? And he said, this is nuts. He said, this agency should go. And he went and talked to a very famous economist, George Stiglitz, who said that's never going to happen. It's impossible to break the iron triangle of lobbyists, agencies, and industry. When they want it, you can't get rid of it. And you know what? They did it. They abolished an entire federal agency. Ted Kennedy, Steve Breyer, Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter did it. And if they can do it, we can do it too, all right? And now we all fly. It's incredibly uncomfortable, and you have to pay extra for everything. But we all get to, it's people, the number of people flying went like this. It changed our ability to stay connected with family, to do business. It changed everything in our lives. And it can be done. So ultimately, though, how do you get the spirit of liberty going? And I think it is civic education and what this man is doing, okay? And it's really important to me that young people learn we have 3 branches of government, not 4, not 7. We got 3, and why we have 3. Why did they pick the legislative branch to be the people? An executive in one hand, judges with life tenure. Now, I'm not saying you have to like them, just why? Why? And before you start throwing around new ideas, maybe you just understand what we have. And you may want to change it. That's up to we, the people. Those words are around here somewhere. But to understand what you have, I agree with Daniel Webster that said what happened in that hall was a miracle. It was a miracle. The notion that people can govern themselves while respecting inalienable rights of each person and with the aspiration that we should all be treated equally under law. That happened there. Those promises were made. That's our national report card. We have some work to do on all those fronts, right? But that's our hope. And I think it's essential that we all have that in our hearts and turn to one another again and look at those whom we disagree. And as Steve loves to say, if you listen to somebody else talk long enough, you're likely to find something you can agree on. And maybe we should start there.
Today's episode was produced by Tanea Tauber, Lana Ulrich, Samson Mastashari, and Bill Pollack. It was engineered by Advanced Staging Productions, David Stotts, and Bill Pollack. Research was provided by Samson Mastashari, Cooper Smith, and Yara Durese. Please recommend the show to friends, colleagues, or anyone anywhere who's eager for a weekly dose of constitutional illumination and debate. Sign up for the newsletter at constitutioncenter.org/connect. Friends, check out the new Constitution 101 class that I mentioned in the show and that the NCC just launched with Khan Academy. You can find it on Khan's website, and I can't wait to hear what you think about it. It is so deep and rich and exciting, and I took the quizzes. They're tough, they're challenging, but totally worth it, and I know you'll ace them as well. And while you're at it, support the mission by becoming a member at constitutioncenter.org/membership, or give a donation of any amount in honor of Constitution Day to support our work, including the podcast, at constitutioncenter.org/donate. On behalf of the National Constitution Center, happy Constitution Day. I'm Jeffrey Rosen.